Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to What's Up With That, the show that brings you interesting people, places, cultures, and subcultures here in the South Bay, the San Francisco Bay Area, the state of California, and beyond. And tonight, what's up with the Santa Clara Aquamaids going for gold? What's it like to be a nationally acclaimed athlete? And what are the challenges in becoming such an athlete? Well, tonight we're very fortunate to have three well-known, world-famous, I would say, nationally famous athletes who have a very difficult sport, synchronized swimming. And let me tell you why I'm interested in synchronized swimming. I was a swimmer myself, and I would see the synchronized swimmers practicing. And of course, you know, as anybody, I would try it, thinking, wow, this really doesn't look that hard. Well, think again. I would not be a synchronized swimmer because I just didn't have it. But some people do, and there's a lot of dedication, and we're so lucky to have the Aquamaids here in our community, representing our community. So let's meet the Aquamaids. First of all, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Ekhilevsky. She is currently the head coach for the U.S. National Synchronized Swimming Team. What's up?
Hello, what's up?
How are you? We have Kendra Zanotto. She is the lead coach for the 13 and 15-year-olds for the Aquamaids, and she is also a former member of the 2004 U.S. Olympic medal team in synchronized swimming. Yeah! And then we have Mary Killman. She is a current member of the U.S. Synchronized Swimming national team. So we have a great panel here tonight. And so let's just get started. Why did you get involved with the Aquamaids?
Well, I started with Aquamaids when I was 8 years old. I think my mom was trying to find a summer activity for me, and she found a flyer in a magazine that said, "Do you like to swim? Do you like to dance? Well, join the Aquamaids." And I like to swim and I like to dance. So in I went.
Combination, huh?
That was the start of it for me. And I joined one of our summer session classes, and the next year I started training with the Aquamaids year-round.
How about you?
I actually started my whole synchro career in Texas for a few years. Santa Clara had always been known as the top team. You know, that's the team you want to go to. And so I
made a good choice.
Let's hope so. Yeah, I moved out to California, started training with the Aquamaids. It has gone pretty well.
Great, good. And you, how'd you start with the Aquamaids?
Well, I came here as a swimmer when I was in college. I grew up with my father in the Navy, so I swam in clubs all around the country. But like Mary, I came here because it is the best club in the country, and graduated from college here and tried some work in my field, and I just didn't mean anything to me. So I started to coach, and I've done it ever since.
You came back to your roots, right?
That's right.
So the process of becoming an Aquamaid, let's talk about that. So you, like you said, you got the flyer. What was your first day like?
I remember being cold. It was, you know, a lot of times for young girls jumping in the pool, it's always a little chilly. But I remember I had a little rash guard wetsuit shirt I put on and dove in the pool. And once they turned on the music and we started choreographing routines, it was all, you know, all just fun. Right. It was all fun when you first started. Then the work starts in, you know.
So what are some of the standard moves for synchronized swimming, or are there standard moves? Is there a set? You could probably answer this question the best.
Well, standard moves, I don't know that we have just a few. We have maybe a multitude. In general, you are trying to propel your body up out of the water as high as possible. So you can do that upright. You can do it upside down. In a team, we have lifts. So you're actually throwing somebody up in the air where they're doing an acrobatic move, and that's without the use of the bottom. So we've got...
My goodness.
Yeah, I know.
You must get really, really tired sometimes.
Well, we don't do it anymore. I think she does get tired, but
I get tired watching them. You know? I imagine, oh, that's probably pretty hard.
Well, we try not to make you tired. It just doesn't always work.
But I think, you know, there's no sport that you're going to excel in unless you work. I mean, that's just the way it is. I can't think of a sport that you can just glide through.
Right.
You know, gliding is actually a good analogy to synchronized
Yes.
swimming. So what's like some of the trademark moves that maybe that?
Well, we have spins, just like an ice skater would. And Mary is one of the best spinners, I would say, in the country. So that's wonderful. We've got a lot of what we call rockets, which is just a thrust action, propelling yourself up out of the water. Jumps, upright, the same kind of thing. Our sport requires a lot of flexibility. So we have split moves or moves where we're taking limbs around our head and all sorts of fun things, but I think speed has become more and more important in our sport over the past few years. So we're constantly trying to change and adapt to the demands of the rest of the world, and speed is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I bet it is. So what was your favorite move when you were an Aquamaid?
I was always one of the smaller ones on the team, so I was usually the person being thrown out of the water. So lifts were always.
But that would be fun. I think that would be like the coolest one.
Yeah, you know, a lot of things in synchro are fun until you land on the person that was throwing you up, and then that's unlovely. And then, you know, there's injuries involved. But lifts were always a favorite of mine, and some of the more basic moves, just like the treading water, the egg beater, how you're upright above the water and performing different arm strokes. That was always kind of what I enjoyed doing.
Yeah, very difficult. Well, we're going to look at some images of the Santa Clara Aquamaids in action. We'll probably see some of the things that you mentioned. So let's look at the Aquamaids right now. All right, we're back here with the Santa Clara Aquamaids, three very distinguished swimmers and coaches as well. And I was wondering, the process of designing a routine, you know, when what do you look at?
What do we look at? Well, first you need to select music that interests you and touches you. And music selection is very important. And then you go about the choreography, and it can take anywhere from a couple weeks to a couple months to create your routine. You want to keep it interesting. You want to keep it fast-paced. You want to make sure that you put in all the elements that the judges are looking for. And you want it to be creative. And that is what is constantly a challenge, because you're trying to do something that has never been done before.
Right. Well, that's great. I mean, that's the way it should be.
Absolutely.
So you talked about the judges. What do the judges look for?
They look for height. They look for power. They look for extension. They look for speed. They look for beauty, music interpretation, presentation, synchronization, difficulty, use of the pool.
Like everything, right?
Everything, basically.
Basically.
Yes.
So, okay, so you've got your routine now. How long does it take to practice a routine to where you would feel, or you would feel confident enough that it's ready to go?
A long time. I would say, to really have mastered the routine, 8 months, maybe.
Wow.
Really mastered the routine.
Yeah, because I imagine they look at every single finger, every possible.
Everything.
Because I've seen it. That's why I was so fascinated by the sport, because it's just such precision skills have to be learned.
There is a tremendous.
My question is, how do you hold your breath so long?
You train.
Practice.
It's one of the things you start when you're young. Your coaches have you do laps of underwater. And you just, I think part of it is getting used to the feeling. A lot of us are capable of holding our breaths longer than we realize. You just don't know what it feels like to hold your breath for that long. And once you get past, okay, understanding what that feeling's like, it's how much further can you push it, and how much activity can you do before, during, and after you hold your breath like that.
So becomes like a psychological thing, like a mind over matter.
Oh, definitely. That's a huge part of it. And then just, the training builds you up physically and also builds you up mentally to know that you can do it.
Have you ever been in a situation where you are just running out of breath?
Many synchronized swimmers run out of breath. Yes.
Many times.
I can imagine. So the most difficult moves, what's like the most difficult move you've learned? That you've mastered, maybe.
It's hard to isolate them, because normally they're put in intense combinations, and you're trying to do it with 8 people. I'd say some of the hardest things to do are just synchronizing 8 people and matching 8 people. So the moves get exponentially more difficult the more people you add into them.
So what happens at a meet? Explain the process of a meet.
Well,
just coming back from one this weekend. It depends on what level the meet is, but normally they're pretty straightforward. Each event is held. The judges are sitting on both sides. The announcer announces your team's name, and you walk out there, and they blow the whistle. Your music comes on. You dive in, and you just do what you've been trained to do.
So it starts the minute you dive in?
Well, it starts on deck.
Okay. Oh, really? Okay.
Routines start on deck. There's about 10 seconds of deck work that is also judged, and then. So
you have to be a gymnast too, as well.
You've got to be everything to be a synchronized swimmer. That's the hard part. In addition to those 8 months of training the routine, you're trying to lay this base of the perfectly well-rounded athlete, and that's sometimes the more difficult part. But meets, there's spectators and teammates cheering, and judges in their white uniforms with clipboards writing things down, and it's an intense situation, but it's also a lot of fun. A lot of the team camaraderie really stands out at meets, and for the Aquamaids, that's something we're really known for, because we have a large club, and everyone's in their red and white sweats, and
that's great.
It's really, we're all always proud to be part of our team when we go to meets.
And you've competed on the Olympic level. How is that different from competing at a national level?
Just the stage is bigger. There's more people watching. There's more on the line. But I felt like it was everything. All the meets I went to in my life were just kind of leading up to that one. It wasn't different necessarily in any way. But
well, that's good. Not intimidating. Not.
Oh, it wasn't. It was intimidating, and
I'm trying to get into the core.
I was nervous.
This is the good stuff,
But it was more just. It just seemed like more reward.
Right. Well, I'm sure
the process was.
That you had gotten to the top of. That
the process was the same, but just after you swam, everyone was more excited, and there was more hype around the whole thing than. More recognition than we normally
American flags waving and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about preparing your body for this. The exercise. How much exercise do you have to do daily, or what kinds of exercise do you do?
Well, there's quite a bit that leads up to what we want. They usually start the season doing a lot of water conditioning, a lot of yardage, a lot of pretty intense workouts, and they do strength training, usually plyometrics with Dr. Don. And so we do that about 3 times a week, and with the water conditioning, in addition, we try to do as much flexibility as possible, and Pilates, and anything that we can really learn about and want to try.
Okay, well, that's good. How much of the training is actually done in the pool? What percentage would you say?
Well, I would say maybe 90%.
Okay. Now, there's been some comparisons sometimes to synchronized swimming, the kinds of training that you do and speed swimming. Do you see that?
Well, we use their sport as one of our base training methods, but and it's in the water. But synchronized swimming, swimming requires a lot more, a lot of different.
A lot more dimension.
A lot more dimension.
Oh yeah, well definitely. It's like a ballet in the water. Okay, so we're going to look again at some pictures of the Aquamaids in action, and you're going to see how really intense this sport is. And I keep trying to say that because it's beautiful and it is intense. It's a water ballet. This is the Santa Clara Aquamaids. All right, now you've got to admit that stuff is absolutely incredible. These are great, great athletes, and they deserve our support. They deserve our support, our community support and our national support. So let's talk about, okay, the big performances, the big meets, and some of the things that will happen. And I want to start off with, you're in costume, and so everyone's got, a pretty extravagant costumes. I'm sure there's a lot of probably money involved in these costumes and, making sure everything. Have you ever had any major costume malfunctions?
No, I never have. But as a swimmer, you're always afraid of that. So you make sure your clasp is hooked tight, and sometimes you ask your mom to sew you into the suit so that you prevent any costume.
You need that stress level to
drama.
be taken
Yeah,
off.
you don't want to be worrying about your suit. There's, like we do wear hair back in buns, and we wear headpieces. And one of the most common problems is that like a hairpiece kind of comes loose, so there might be a little piece flapping and bobby pins sticking out. But I don't think we've had any like big, dramatic costume problems.
You hope, right?
Yeah, I hope, yes.
So what other kinds of complications could happen?
Well, from a coach's perspective, one of the biggest concerns is a problem with the music. I think even at the Olympic Games that Kendra was in, the Russians, who ultimately won a gold medal, they started their team routine, and they got about 15 seconds into it, and the music stopped.
Oh, no.
The CD.
Oh.
And which is a very, very, very big deal. So they got out, and they waited a couple minutes, and then they did it again. But, you know, if that happens at the end of a routine, you have to swim the whole program over. And
oh, so you're not like eliminated?
I wouldn't be looking forward to that.
You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that.
So they don't just eliminate you then? Or you,
oh, no. You're not eliminated. But I do believe there's a new rule this year that if there's a problem with the music, you're actually penalized.
Okay.
They take something away from your score. But from a coach's perspective, the music is it's a very stressful element to it.
So what are the, you brought it up, what are the major penalties in synchronized swimming? What would be a really bad situation?
Well, touching the bottom would be huge.
Okay, all right. So that's the big one.
That's the big one. And actually, there have been some countries that have been penalized. Even at the last Olympic Games, there was a country.
Well, because you have the underground, then you have the cameras in the pool, so you already see that.
Most of the pools are normally deep enough that you couldn't touch the bottom if you wanted to. And in fact, the pool that we train most at, the International Swim Center at Santa Clara, is 17 feet deep. So it's not really a problem. It's like people say, oh, it's pretty easy. You just stand on the bottom. Well, not so. But touching the bottom's a big one. I think having your music be the correct time is one.
Yes.
What's the standard for a routine? What's the length that they...
It changes depending on the age and the level of competition. Like the 13, 15-year-olds, their routines are about 3 minutes, 3 minutes and 30 seconds long. Yours are
a little bit longer.
30.
A little bit longer.
So let's talk about injuries. Have any of you been injured?
Yes. All synchronous swimmers have had their share of some sort of injury. There's concussions, there's pulled groins, which I happen to have right now.
I'm sorry.
There's shoulder problems, there's knee problems, but...
The movement in the sport puts a lot of stress on shoulders and knees, so without proper strength and conditioning programs, there's knee and shoulder injuries. There's also, like Mary said, sometimes collision injuries. I know I had a kick in the nose, broke my nose one year, just you're moving so dynamically from pattern to pattern. Sometimes if not everything is perfect and not all 8 people are doing the same thing, someone gets a little...
Is there a feeling to ever get hurt when that happens?
Well, it's always, there's always a lot of emotions that go into training this intensely with 8 other teammates, but I think most of us know that nothing's ever intentional, but
usually.
Yeah. So with all of this, what about your social life? Do you have social life?
Well, as an athlete, it's really challenging, and I'm sure a lot of the athletes coming up through the program right now make a lot of sacrifices. They might not be able to go to, their prom or their school dances or all the football games because they're training. And it's hard because they're in a sport that isn't supported by the school system, so a lot of times they don't get the acknowledgement or credit from their peers or from their teachers. So sometimes...
I think that's a really good point that you're making. A huge point about this sport.
Girls, especially when they're, going into high school, feel like they're putting in all this time for what? Like, where's the credit? But
it's in your heart,
Yeah, it's in your heart.
I'm sure when you look at yourself on video footage or whatever, you're probably like, wow, this is what it's all about.
Definitely. I think it's a lot easier to ask that question after you've completed your career. I'd say the sacrifices, there were a few sacrifices, but I got so much from it in the end. I think maybe when you're training day to day and you haven't always made your goals and you're struggling, with your next practice, those sacrifices seem a little bigger.
Right. So who are some of your inspirations throughout the years? Who've been some people that have inspired you to keep going?
Well, Jenny was my coach when I was 13, from when I was 13 to when I was about 20. And she was definitely a huge inspiration for me. She taught us that the sport was about a lot more than just, executing the moves, but it was about the dedication and the passion and the work ethic. So You're a huge inspiration to
Thank
me.
you.
Oh, that's great though. How about you?
Oh, I've always looked up to like all of the Olympic athletes. Like I've had the coaching from Chris. I've had the coaching from Jenny. I've always looked up to like, especially your team. You know, it's the bronze medal team. It was this amazing. They worked so hard and they got this amazing accomplishment out of it.
I mean, it comes with being part of such a strong club too. We've all had so many great swimmers go before us, and so many swimmers on the teams ahead of us that taught us, you know, what it takes and shown us what it takes. So I think that's one of the advantages to a lot of the young girls coming through our club, is that we have such a strong tradition.
Right. Well, you do. Okay, we have just a very short time, in 15 seconds each. Tell me what's your favorite memory.
Well, that's easy for me. Going back to what Kendra said, watching somebody grow up in the sport and taking them from the time that they are 13 years old and are going through everything that a 13-year-old goes through, watching them go out there at the Olympic Games and get a bronze medal, to me, that's pretty nice.
I bet it's great. And yourself?
My favorite memory, my parents somehow were standing right behind the flagpole when our flag went up for our medal ceremony. And I remember looking up at the flag and thinking, oh, that's so cool that we have our flag, and then realizing, oh, there's my family. They're
How
here
cool is that?
for me. So that was my favorite one.
Definitely my first international meet with the national team. You know, I had come from Santa Clara. I had made one step up to the national team, and I was representing my country. It's a very big feeling that not many people get.
That's great. Well, thank you very, very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
You know, the best of success to you. I hope that this has alerted the audience to synchronized swimming, the hard work, and the need for you to support these athletes, because these are truly, truly wonderful athletes. And I hope to see you in the next Olympics.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. And to our viewing audience as ever, if you're walking down the street and you see something interesting and you wonder to yourself, hey, what's up with that? Well, tune into our show, What's Up With That. Maybe you'll find exactly what you're looking for. We'll see you next week on What's Up With That. Good night, everybody. Jumbo,